Folding while we do this here.
Oh, the laundry integration.
Man, tell you, when I was folding my tent yesterday, I was like, "Oh yeah, this is integration application right here, baby." I was being very meticulous. Yesterday was the first time that I've ever, in all of my history of camping, this is the first time that I have ever cleaned and dried my tent before I got home. I felt like a grown up.
Yeah, mine's currently laying in the backyard for
Uh huh.
after this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's one of those things. Takes a big load off to go ahead and get that done.
Oh, or even if I would have gotten back and been like, oh, okay, it's dry enough. And then the very next time I need to use it, man, this smells like wet socks.
Yeah, doesn't take long for a tent to get funky.
Um,
Man, I've really been reflecting quite a bit on that whole experience this weekend. It sure was incredible, man. I tell you, just having the comparison between that and the Myco in Jamaica, and just feeling the real community sense of it all. It's just, oh man, it fucking gets me so excited.
I can't put words really to it. You know, I've made
Well,
friends in this community that it really dawned on me over a year now. Um, Stay in a completely different time zone that I
mhm.
got to spend time with.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
no, it's amazing, man. It's really incredible. The power of community. That's what psychedelics are really all about.
yeah, and even the more recent people who have been coming for the past several weeks, watching their development, and it's it's exactly what you referred to, that when that it wasn't that you weren't doing good work in Jamaica, but there there was a piece, there was a few pieces missing in this.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I mean we're already seeing people make so much more progress just because we have that stable, consistent community, and for those that are listening to this, that's what on psilocybin in large part isn't it? Is my attempt to just kind of be available in a stable, reliable fashion, so that you can really get to know people, can get to know what we're all about, um, and yeah, just I think it's so important. I know that it's so important when people are working with psychedelics in these really vulnerable places, for them to know that the people that they're working with are trustworthy, normal, healthy, family oriented people. I mean, I'm not folding clothes to try to make it look like I'm family oriented. I'm folding clothes because I got a lot of things going on, and this is a good time for me to fold clothes and have some conversation. So if there's anybody out there that wants to talk about mushrooms, psilocybin, psychedelic experiences, Tristan's going to post the link there if he hasn't already. You can hop on the call. We can talk about your experiences. We had some incredible experiences shared this weekend. We did a retreat for 15 people, a camping retreat, which was something different, something special, and I feel like something that I definitely want to do many, many more times in the future. It was so incredible, so beautiful, just to like get in there and from go, just get raw. Because I mean, I don't know. I have certainly administered psilocybin to people in uh, luxury villas and uh, you know, five-star resorts. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but the mushroom experience, despite what we see represented in the media, is very seldomly just lay there peacefully with your eyes closed and meet God, come back and tell everybody how wonderful it was and how you're a new person now. No, there's usually some snot, some tears, some laughter, some rolling around, some grittiness. And so to be able to just like jump into that from go is has an enormous value to helping people really get into their experience. And a lot of people talked how they felt like the experience was really strong. Like, nobody took more than 5 grams, but there were some massive trips there. We had one, well, I'm sure it's okay if I say her name, Honor, who was on the podcast before talking about her experiences. She said that the 5 gram dose that she took was far more powerful than any of the other larger doses that she's taken before. And I really think that a lot of that has to do with just jumping in. Like I said, you're just like, you're letting down barriers from go, when you're in that kind of camping, raw wilderness type scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it was really, really amazing. What would you say was your favorite part about the whole weekend? You got any highlights to you?
Yeah, I think the having that many people there uh, offered something that I've never um, been a part of to that point,
Mm-hmm.
um, and really feeling that. But also, something I came up and told you over the weekend was that I was able to recognize that I had a tool belt. I may have not known everything, or maybe there's some other tools there that I may not understand.
Mm-hmm.
But just recognizing that, um, specifically something that you said a second ago, and I'm really excited to hear from Brad later or sooner, eh, on this. And is the mucus, the
Yeah,
snot,
what about it?
um, just in the space. you if I would have never had any orientation, or been diving along this path, I would have been like, oh, my nose is just running.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but when there's synchronicities amongst when the nose is running, and you allow yourself to take from other teachings, that there's memories or emotions tied up in that. Uh, that's that was a very special moment for me along my personal journey uh, within the space.
What do you mean? How so? What was a special moment?
So one of the members is going through some very intense moments, um, and during the channeling process, if you will, for lack of better words, uh, that in the midst of the tears and otherwise, that whenever that came on, I I didn't really notice it at first of what that possibly could symbolically represent. Um, but yeah, it it was it was really cool.
What was really cool? I don't understand. You got to be more clear. What happened that was really cool?
M- Me as a facilitator having snot run out of my nose.
Okay.
And then if you tie in with the idea that people release, uh, specifically the people that are purging, like that is a form at which some cultures we'll speak of how things can be released.
Right. Yeah. So you
Yeah.
being able to access that without having taken any sacrament, you mean, was kind of like a monumental experience? Is that what you're saying? Just
Yeah, I mean that was the my lack of better words. Yeah, not even taking the sacrament and still
mm,
having the most powerful experience in the space, to this point and continuing to build on that.
I think that's well worth talking about. You know, this actual experience of whatever people want to maybe call it contact buzz or um, you know just being able to pick up on the frequency without having taken the dose.
Mhm.
That is something that, man, I wonder when or if we'll ever get to any kind of scientific study of that. But it's like it's undeniable, you know. I mean, people that know, and it wasn't just you. There were several people who talked about feeling the come up despite not having taken any mushrooms. You know, feeling the rise and fall of the energy. That kind of there was a period. I'm not sure where you were. I think it was after you had left under the pavilion where um, Emilio came in, and there was just this kind of swirling peak of energy that you could just feel it. There was like this point where everything got really kind of intense, and then it seemed to plateau off, and then like I don't know, 5, 10 minutes later, it kind of picked up again and it reached this, like you could just feel it
Mhm.
swirling around the space under that pavilion until it just kind of came out and it released. There were a couple people that had some shouting and some tears and stuff that was all kind of synchronistic together.
Mhm.
And for people who were not on the mushrooms to be able to feel that ebb and flow, not just witness it, not just see it outside of themselves, but to feel it within themselves is, I guess, like to me, I think about it in terms of like a testimony to um, what's going on in like the other layer of reality, right? Like we we think that we take mushrooms and then we enter into this state, but I think it's more like um, we become aware and enter into a different reality that has different rules and has different kind of ways of operating. But you can also enter into that without having taken the mushrooms. You can be around it. You can pick up on that frequency and get tuned into it. Go ahead and let Brad in there.
Yeah, there's something very valuable. Every time I keep putting him in, he ends up disappearing on me. The the thing that you said of it being a different reality, um, it it really seems to me that within yogis or deep meditators,
Excuse me.
you know, what is from their teachings, what is the difference in that reality? Is it a different reality? Is it setting amongst us, overlapping us like a energetic web that or a veil that unless you have spent that time to unveil that it is there.
Yeah,
Maybe
oh well,
not.
I definitely believe that it's a reality that's there all the time. It's just that we're having limited access to it. What's going on, Brad? Oh, you're still getting some
Oh,
audio thing again, man. Can't hear you.
still can't hear you, Brad.
So I just
Nothing right
yeah,
now.
keep working on it there, buddy. We'll get you here, whatever happens. Um,
If
but this is the stuff that again, like I don't know. Maybe there is research being done. Maybe there are stuff, people trying to understand it better. Um, and that's just not what we're seeing in the mainstream, you know. But
hmm
it's just like I don't know. Whenever I hear psilocybin being talked about as a psychiatric kind of tool, it's just like I feel like that's just completely missing the point of it. And maybe
hmm
again, maybe it's just because the deeper reality is not something most people are able to hear, and it wouldn't sell very well. Um, but at the same time, it feels like to a certain extent, it's a disservice to not tell people what's really going on here, which is one of the things that I want to be doing, and why we're doing this is so that we can talk about it in real terms. And when you know this is not just our imagination or my imagination of what's happening when you've got multiple people corroborating, from the same, they may be in the same group, but not necessarily like close to each other, and they're experiencing similar things, or there's transference. I'm
hmm
curious for for you and some of the other people who have, like Brad, who's gone through this um, round of training with us at Sanctuary, but more so for people who have been like Kristen and Charles, people who have recently been through the training and have just now had the first kind of opportunity to put that into practice. I'm curious what kind of stuff, if anything, from those conversations and the readings that we did within the cleric training, did you see in action this weekend?
Yeah, I believe that's something that I kind of was thinking about when we first started this conversation, specifically around the the orientation to for
Mm-hmm.
these people to their experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would say, the answers that you've read, every cleric submitted a different response, and I kind of communicated with fellow cleric Charles, and we both agreed that the orientation is, from the moment that you are born uh,
Mm.
for these processes. And there's people out there who may even argue that it's before that, but that is definitely a moment. And the preparation, the moment that you flip that switch and know that this is an upcoming thing for you, uh, and then you start to, even if you don't even consciously realize it, you're in the background. This is processing, and the things that you're going to experience are working their way into your mix. Um, and the biggest answer for that question is what has not came yet. Watching this process be integrated into their lives,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and how something that the training showed me that I was unfamiliar with was just how many ways there are to integrate
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
your life.
Yeah, we talk about it like it's just more talking, but I swear, man, the folding clothes for me is one of the it's such an important tool for integrating my experiences, for putting my experience into practice, right? That's what integration is. Integration isn't just talking about it; it's putting it into practice.
Yeah. Yeah. Even the some of the integrations that were other than folding clothes that were flow state related. um,
Yeah, there's many others.
uh,
And
from
the,
the
like this isn't
instruments.
really related to a flow state for me. This is like that the obedience one that I tried to talk about, right? Like that this is something that mushrooms have told me to do, be more organized in my life. And so, okay, I'm going to do that. Have more of a consistent practice.
Mm,
So, okay, I'm doing pretty good about getting up and meditating for 20 minutes, journaling for 20 minutes, lifting weights for a half an hour. Like I've been, I can, and it feels good, like to be able to to see yourself and say, yeah, I'm doing the things that I've been told to do, you know?
mm-hmm. Yeah. I, the obedience part, it almost is one of those to me. If it's not going through, you will feel the rattlings of it periodically.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you'll suffer the consequences, you know? I mean, like it's not telling us to do something just to suit itself, you know? And it's, you know, I know we're speaking about the mushroom as if it is another entity, and I believe that it is the mushroom is allowing our higher self to speak to us, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So we're not telling ourselves to do these things just for shits and giggles. Like we're telling ourselves to do this thing because it's what we need to do. It's what will help us be healthier mentally, maybe physically, spiritually, you know. And so if we don't do the thing that we know we need to do, then there will be consequences. I'm kind of hearing it again with cannabis. I've been getting back on the cannabis kick, and I heard the mushrooms telling me this weekend, where you at? Check out. You gotta get this thing back under control. And so Courtney and I had a little conversation about that this morning, and it's something that I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna fall back into that trap of just like being my same old. Oh, I'll slow down on the cannabis later. I'm gonna do it now. So can you let Brad in, see if it's working now?
I mean,
Talk to
are
us,
you?
Brad.
I think you're still muted right now, but we should be able to hear you on your phone.
No, I'm not hearing him. I don't see where it's muted
On
either.
Yeah, on the if you can see the little sound bar down by the mic logo, I'm not for sure how your screen looks. It should give you an audio feedback to let you know when the sound's going through too. Put them over for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Weird. I don't know what's going on there.
well, it did take him a second last time, and when
Yeah,
we got
yeah,
him in here, it was
yeah,
glorious.
yeah.
No, cannabis, tobacco, alcohol. It's not there.
Oh, there's Charles. Let's see if we can get him
It
in here.
Hey,
Yo, Charles, what's up, brother?
not too much. Just avoiding my obedient training right now. I've done like pretty much zero today.
Yeah, it's okay. You can, you can
Yeah,
be.
that
I
was
was
a
tired too.
yeah. I needed a little extra rest. All
Yeah,
that foot in the mud ministry, baby, it was
yeah.
great.
That was probably, if I had to say what was one of my favorite things about the weekend, it was the mud. I loved having the mud between my toes.
Felt great.
Oh, it was so wonderful, so wonderful. Yeah, what kind of things have you been reflecting on? I'm sure that drive back offered you nice reflection time.
Yeah, it was like a third the time it took to get there.
Yeah.
Actually, I was surprised at how close we really are. Like you were talking about. I mean, 4 hours to Louisville. Like I ate 4 hours for breakfast today. It
No, I
flies
feel like
by.
that's true. Yeah, I've driven to St. Louis a couple of times. I was surprised at how close it really was. Um, so I actually just realized today I got there's a guy driving in from St. Louis that wants to have a conversation with me about a church that he's considering opening there. So I think it's a multi-sacrament church. Um, so it reminded me I wanted to let you know. So maybe you might want to be in touch with him just to, find other people of a similar mindset. I haven't met him yet, so I don't know if it really is a similar mindset, but gonna feel it out. Making more connections.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what it's about. Yeah, I've noticed there's a good community here. I've told a few people about our church too. It's just if it resonates and anybody's interested, we're here for them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But yeah, what I was back to your question about reflecting on the weekend. One of the most powerful things I saw was uh, how the natural events seem to be part and parcel of our experience.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
the literal floods of water carrying the bank away.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everybody was there releasing a tremendous amount of shit and dumping it in the river to take it back to source. And it was like it manifested in torrential floods and the bank carrying away.
Yeah, yeah. That was really incredible. Um, man, it played such a big part of my trip, my experience. The river did, and just like you're saying, in this kind of metaphor of washing away the old, and like even like watching all the sticks and all the junk, kind of wash down the creek was very very metaphorical for me, as we were, snotting and crying and purging and just moving it all out.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it was great. So much synergy.
So we were talking about, before you come out. I don't know if you heard it. We were talking about feeling the experience without having taken any of the sacrament, and you were another great example of that. And that's something that I don't think that people talk about a lot. Don't have a real. There's not much experience with that. There's not much understanding of that. And I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts and your experience around kind of being a part of it and feeling the energy moving and the experience in the air, so to speak, but not having taken any mushrooms yourself.
Yeah, that was probably the biggest surprise. I'm fairly sensitive to energy and esoteric things like that, but the level of it was so palpable that I almost thought I was tripping for a minute
Mhm.
during that come up, and I did not expect it to be that palpable. It was like I was actually describing it to someone as this would make sense to anyone who works on homes. Like if you touch if you touch an outlet that wasn't off before you tried, replacing the receptacle or switch, you get a
Uh-huh.
pretty strong shock.
Right.
But if you touch something like a doorbell, you feel it. It's just not as intense. And
Right.
that was like it was like touching the doorbell wire. Like, ooh, there's current there, but it's
Yeah.
not overwhelming.
Hmm.
And and so I during that come up I noticed I don't know if we're using people's names and stuff, but let's just say there
No,
was
let's
there was
not.
one there was one person who um, seemed to be vibing with, and I look over and he looks over at me and he has that look in his eyes like reality's about to implode, and I just I just kind of did a big exhale, like let it go is kind of what it was saying, and I could feel him following that motion
Mm-hmm.
and letting it go. And we would come back. We would meet up at different points during the trip where it was welling up again, and I would just kind of exhale and just say, "Put it in the river," that kind of thing. And he would do it. And then after the experience, he was um, saying how that was helping him to do something with the welling up. It was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a reminder for him to let it go. So, we've talked before about sort of a telepathic kind of communication that can happen when you're tripping with other people.
Right.
So there was, again, a little bit of that type of thing. It wasn't as strong as perhaps if I were dosing as well,
Mm-hmm.
but it was still there and noticeable. Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, kind of the same question I was asking Tristan. In terms of some of the stuff that we talked about in the cleric training. I mean, this is one of the things that we did talk about. Um, but are there any other parts of that conversation, that 8 week conversation we had, that you saw showing up? Maybe, I don't know, surprisingly or unexpectedly. Tristan was talking about the mucus and this kind of mucus holding memory and being a purge of this content. But
Mhm.
yeah, is there anything else that you came across?
Um, I mean, for one, it was like it was like a master class, a capstone of the course to really see it all in action.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the healing as a tribe really made sense to me. I kind of understood it intellectually,
Mm-hmm.
enough that I probably sounded pretty good in my answers. But to really experience that, that was kind of groundbreaking for me. Like we really did heal as a tribe,
Yeah.
um, and people who might be very different in the rat race, just different places in life and everything. We all were like a family, sharing this current that was running through. Everybody brought that intention to support and embrace each other, and watching the transformations, like from the first campfire circle to
Mm-hmm.
the one the next night, and into the next day when we were all packing up. It's amazing to see these transformations people made.
Yeah, no, I love that you're saying that. I think that is one of the more important or more valuable kind of messages that we could convey to the psychedelic community at large, or those who are new to psychedelics, is that the group experience, the healing as a tribe, as a community, has so much more power than the one-on-one kind of solo thing. I mean, the amount of kind of uh, sorry, I'm minimizing this thing here. The amount of information that you can get from all of those different kind of data points is so valuable. The ability to identify with, to drop all those labels and all those boundaries that we usually put up, political shit, or where you're from, all the dumb stuff. It's really
Mm-hmm.
incredible.
I
Oh
think
yeah.
something that Charles really helped me see, and I'm excited to see in the future, is the skill set that everyone's coming to this with, and that people have their own unique gifts that they were born with, um, and all that. It kind of makes it to where um, each retreat is unique, uh, but it's also uh, learning how Charles taps in to energy in the way he does. Like it just shows you the true gifts that are all out there walking amongst us that, may or may not be tapped into by people. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Mhm.
I see what you're saying too. Everybody brought their gifts to the table. Everything from the kitchen to the cave
Hmm.
docent. I mean, just everybody was there. You could really see it was like a primordial community. Like we had everything. If it was a desert island we landed on, we'd be fine because we all had each other, and at least one person knew how to cook, you know?
Oh, there's a couple cooks there. I know that. But yeah, no, everybody kind of bringing and contributing in different ways is really it's so beautiful. It helps everybody feel the value that they bring and see the value in others, which is another kind of set apart from the thing like we were doing, before in Jamaica, where you got cooks in the villa and groundskeepers and all the like the house staff just has this kind of it has this feeling of separateness, which I do not like. I want to feel like everybody's in this together, and I really felt that way even with Shane's folks that came in, and yeah. So let's get Sasha in here and hear some stuff from him. I don't know if Brad is still having trouble with the audio. Would love to have him part of the conversation. Yo, Sasha, what's going on?
Hey there, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Wonderful, good to see everyone.
Likewise,
Great to see you.
likewise. I wonder if this might be a better time. I wonder if this is a better time for people to come on this thing. And does it matter to you all?
I mean, it's hit or miss with me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead, Cynthia.
All good. All good.
I'm used to coming on at 7, but 5 p.m. works for me, or at least 5 p.m. East Coast time.
Yeah. What's on your mind today, Sasha?
Quite a lot. I've been rather busy, but I just want to get to know Charles a little bit for a minute. I haven't met you before. I want to say hi.
Howdy.
I'd like to know a little bit about who you are. I'll start off by saying that I'm a freelance journalist, an integration coach, and the host of the Ultradelic podcast. Oh, and I'm also an author.
Oh, nice. That's interesting. I'd like to check out some of your stuff. Definitely sounds like you're in the right place here. Yeah, I guess a brief rundown on me. I'm a painter from St. Louis, a house painter, not a fine artist, a rough artist. And I got into psychedelics around 18. Instantly felt like this is deeply spiritual. Kind of felt strange partying with them because I'm like, don't you all feel like you're touching the universe? Not really. It's like, okay, I don't know. But progressively over the years, I've held that spiritual practice with psychedelics and found my way to this community. And it's that feeling, that expression. I think I found my tribe. People say, definitely feel that here. So, and then I'm also bringing some skills as I went to a massage therapy school shortly after high school, and that was the beginning of like a holistic type of mindset. So everything is joined, everything is coincided, and just finished the cleric training program, and visited this weekend as a cleric, and here I am today.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. I'm really glad that the weekend getaway might not be the right term. Probably isn't. Retreat, I think it was used, but I'm really glad that was a joyous occasion for everyone. At least that's how it's been described. Glad to hear that. There's definitely a sense of group cohesion that can come about during group ceremonies, no doubt about it. A shared camaraderie, shared vision, what have you. I just wanted to put this out there. I've been learning more in the recent months and years about tribal identity and what that means for different people. And I've come to notice, and again, I'm just sharing my observations, that a lot of people have overused the phrase in a way that's not best at times. And this is by no means wagging my finger at you. I've come to think a lot about why people use that term and when it's appropriate. And I'm realizing that because of the fact that non-native people tend to overuse the term, it sort of dilutes the meaning and significance of what tribal identity actually means. For many people, that was something that they fought for recognition from the government, among other things. And I think it's something worth considering. The term that I have used in place of it was as if we were a tribe would be group cohesion, shared vision, shared experience. I actually, while you were talking about that earlier, I actually pulled up a reference. I'll read it really briefly. Quote, for Indigenous people, tribal identity is important. So when non-native people say, find your tribe, or other phrases, to describe groups of shared interest, it is offensive to native people because it erases the significance of tribal identity, sovereignty, and people. Instead, we can use words like group, crew, friends, or circle. What do you think of that?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I'm definitely all for respecting indigenous and historical legacies. I may push back a little bit on that and say, in a way, I think we are native. I'm a native Missourian. My genetic background's from all over the world, but I feel like at an energetic level, we are a tribe. I also like to not give words too much power, because in our holy text, the Tao Te Ching, if not that one, then it's in another Taoist writing. But there's this expression that words are like fingers pointing to the moon. If you look at the fingers, you'll miss the moon. And so, as not to get caught up in semantics too much, I kind of like to use that word tribe. If I were now, just to give you a little reference, if I were in a group of natives, and I would probably be careful not to say that I'm Native American, because there's a lot wrapped up in that. So it would probably depend on the group I'm speaking with, but I would push back a little bit and say I do look at us as a tribe, and the tribe we fit into is 21st century psychonauts who come together in peace.
I actually learned about the history of that word recently. Do you know who coined the term?
No, I don't. Who?
It was a fellow whose name was Ernst Junger. He was his official role in the there's no other word to say it, so I'll say it. His role in the Nazi government was as a censor in France. Ernst Junger was actually very close with Albert Hofmann, the individual who, quote unquote, discovered LSD. And in fact, Albert wrote extensively about his friendship with Ernst Junger in Mein Sorgenkind, My Problem Child. Yeah, there's this whole history behind it. A lot of people like to, sort of look at Humphrey Osmond creating the term psychedelic, but there are all these interesting histories behind these words that we use. But yeah, I've been delving a lot. In case you don't know, Charles, I like to look into the sort of the dark side or the shadow side of psychedelics and learn more about what I can, so that we can keep a full perspective, so to speak.
Mhm.
One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about lately was, or rather is, Michael Pollan's new Netflix series. Have you seen it?
Oh, I'm unaware of that. Tell me a little.
Of course, I'd be happy to. So, in case you don't know, Michael Pollan's best-selling 2018 nonfiction book, How to Change Your Mind, got turned into a 4-episode miniseries on Netflix, and each episode was dedicated to a different substance. First one was LSD, followed by psilocybin, then MDMA, and then mescaline/peyote. It was essentially a recreation of his 2018 book insofar that it offered a historical narrative of psychedelic research, psychedelic culture, what have you. And generally speaking, it's gotten what I've described as near unanimous approval, or it's gotten a lot of rave reviews, so to speak.
Yeah.
I've actually published a critique of it that was rather clear in its messaging.
Interesting.
Yeah. Beyond the fact that there were a number of factual errors and factual misrepresentations, there was something that I was really concerned about that was, you could say, overlooked, you could say ignored, you could use a lot of different words to describe it, but there was a glaring omission in that 4-part miniseries. And, this is my hot take. Give me a second. Before I dive into this really quick, I'm curious if anyone on here has heard about the fact that Health Canada recently suspended ongoing MDMA trials amid allegations of what's the right way to put this? Amid allegations of improperly conducted clinical trials. So the story behind all this, not sure if you know, I'll be really brief with this. Recently, video footage surfaced of a MAPS clinical trial participant who it's hard not to ramble on about the story, but essentially video footage of a MDMA session within a MAPS-funded study was released recently, and it was rather clear that the therapist in the video, Richard Jensen, was not acting appropriately, and I'm putting it very lightly here.
That's kind of a big. Can you give a little more hint?
Yeah, I think that this would need some
That's fair. I will go into more depth. This is a heavy topic, so for those who don't want to hear about sexual misconduct, this would be the time to leave the room. Just to flash forward a little bit, what happened in that MDMA session was a preface to what later happened in the long-term follow-up. During the long-term follow-up, the clinical trial participant, who I will not name here, her name is widely known, but she was eventually sexually assaulted by the therapist in question. And when the video footage came forward, it raised a lot of questions about the methodology used in psychedelic psychotherapy, especially MAPS clinical trials. In that video footage, it was rather clear that, and mind you, this was 4 hours of footage condensed into about, I think, 8 minutes. So they were showing all the relevant clips where there was concerning behavior. And at a certain point, I'll just list off various events. At one point, Richard Jensen told the participant to quote, open your legs, end quote, because perhaps he felt as if she had some pent up energy. Mind you, this person, the participant, was enrolled in the study for PTSD that stemmed from a previous sexual assaults. At varying points in the video, you can see Richard Jensen and his wife cuddling with the participant. I mean, full body spooning, cuddling. At one point, Richard Jensen kisses Megan Buisson. Whoa, I just said her name. Well, either way, she's well known. And rather vocal about what happened to her. Point being, I forget where exactly she was kissed, I believe on the forehead, but
I have some comments on there. Can I comment?
Yeah.
So, you know, we've talked about before the boundary dissolving nature of these substances, and I've also heard accounts of indigenous cultures that have more of a what might be described as a matriarchal society where everybody shares everything. Generally, the mother of the child takes the baby into her family, and the brothers and sisters and parents help raise the child. And there's basically, for lack of a better term, total promiscuity. And all the children are the children of the tribe. They're not concerned with who is the father. In fact, I think it's a group from the Amazon that believe that during the fertile period, sex with as many males as possible takes in all of their energy. So you want a strong guy, a funny guy, a sweet guy, and that comes in to make the baby. So anyway, that's a different model of looking at things, and also seeing that these cultures often have some psychedelic agent in their shamanistic practices. It's no surprise to me. But all that being said, it feels like a very gray area, and I don't condone any type of crossing a line in these research studies. But it's also very difficult if you get intimately involved with psychedelics and other people to avoid some, boundary disillusion, especially in let's just face it, sexually repressed society.
Weren't they working with her for several years, like 2-3 years or something like that?
Something along those lines, yes.
Yeah, so let me.
There's a whole story behind it, but go ahead, Eric.
No, there's so much here that we could unpack from, excuse me, the conversation about tribalism and what it means to be indigenous. I've been for several years considering this. Considering myself as a new indigenous. I was born in Kentucky. I'm a fucking Kentuckian, and I think there's a big and very interesting conversation that could be had around what it means to be indigenous. That's a whole other thing. The notion of tribe, Sasha, that's something that I have also struggled with at time. The use of that word, moreover, because my perspective on tribalism is that tribes are usually in solidarity together against another, is how I perceive it. So whenever I hear the word tribe, for me, it generally turns into kind of community isolationism, which I don't really like. But at the same time, like there are so many ways that we express things in the English language that are just fucking nonsense, or or on a weird boundary that I just kind of let it go, which is the reason that I try to use the word community more so. Community for me has that kind of expansiveness rather than the we are sectioned off against other people mentality. And then in terms of this, gosh, I love what Charles is bringing into this conversation, because this is something that is going to be very important and very relevant as psychedelics do become more widely used in therapeutic practices, in religious practices, in recreational experiences. And it's one of the things that we really try to address very head on at Sanctuary, right? Like there's no when if you are a therapist in service to a client, then for me, I think there's like the kind of Western standard on separation. You know what? I think it's 3 years. You're supposed to be no longer in service to a client before you are legally allowed to have a sexual relationship with them. And I think in those contexts that is more than appropriate. Where it is going to get really interesting and is something that we have brought up again very directly, very quickly in our code of ethics, in our training, in our conversations with people is like Charles is saying, it seems inevitable if you have a community of people who are using boundary dissolving substances together over a long period of time that there are going to be issues of intimacy that come up. And my hope is that we can have a mature conversation as a psychedelic in the big psychedelic community about really like specifically what consent is in these situations, you know,
Mm.
like so for instance what we have said at Sanctuary is if if you are if you are a cleric, right, and you are working in service to people within the community, right, and something comes up where you're starting to have feelings for somebody and they're similarly having feelings and like it's just like this is a thing that's happening, the first thing that we ask is that it's brought to at least one of the senior members. It doesn't have to be me, but if there's a woman that is more senior who you can kind of talk to and really like, okay, I'm experiencing this and I want to know if it is authentic or if this is just some kind of trauma bond or adrenaline bond that's coming out of these experiences together. And so what we have asked is that there be at minimum a 6 month period before you even consider having a physical relationship with another member of the community. And basically, like what we really maintain is that if you are hiding a thing or you feel like you have to hide a relationship with someone, then that's all you need to know that it is a no go. Right. And so just the conversation about how we navigate the complexities of human emotions and sexuality and bonding, particularly in these spaces where these very powerful substances have the potential to facilitate some incredible bonds, is a conversation that again, like I hope that as a community we could have it maturely and not in this kind of finger pointing. And I'm not saying that you're doing that. I feel like we are having a very like frank, honest, real discussion about this topic. Um, yeah, so like you know the scenarios being so unique and different have an impact. The way that we work with people, because one of the things that we're finding at Sanctuary is exactly what I love and exactly what we're working to build, intentionally build, is a community support model, not a therapist who is there to apply all this rigor and all this academic understanding, like, and we see it so powerfully, the real connections that people build are what really facilitate the most healing, so like that dance is it's something that Charles brought up the indigenous cultures to South America that have had psychedelics have been such a part of their life for so many years, for millennia, and that's just obviously something that we don't have. And so it is very disheartening to hear that Canada would just halt all research with MDMA over this one event, right? But
That wouldn't be a precise statement. I'm sorry. You can finish
oh,
the statement.
I thought that's what you said. I thought you said Canada stopped all research with MDMA?
I know that there were at least 2 ongoing clinical trials that were halted and reviewed. They expressed a number of concerns in the report. I think they were allowed to start back up again. I can't say that for sure, but there were at least 2. I believe there were more.
Okay.
And specifically, it was not just because of the of that one specific, not isolated, but specific incident involving Miss Buisson. There were other very concerning substantiated allegations that were raised, including increased suicidality in the participants who were given MDMA that was not reported in the literature.
That's happened with psilocybin in the U.S. as well. I know directly from individuals who were involved in the research that there were, more than one suicide post psilocybin session, and and it's not talked about. That's why like your critique of Michael Pollan. I don't know. I haven't read it, but I would imagine that I would probably find a lot that I agree with in there. It's beyond irresponsible to portray these medicines as this kind of immediate panacea for all of your spiritual mental health ills. I have worked with so many people who their first or second mushroom session just really like brought their depression and suicidality to light, and they felt more haunted and terrified than they did before the experience. And if it wasn't for ongoing support and subsequent dosing very close to those original sessions that left them feeling such despair, if they wouldn't have had that, then they probably would have taken their own life. And I have been open about this as well. There was an individual that I worked with in Jamaica who came down twice, who last year during COVID ended up taking his life, and I know that the mushrooms helped him enormously, but he didn't have the community. He didn't have the support within his immediate environment that could really buttress him up against all of the negative self-talk that he had. And, it's just like, I fucking hate these conversations that are one-sided. We have got to start talking about the whole picture, everything that's going on. And that's why I've tried to be very open with my mistakes. I want people to learn from my mistakes. That doesn't mean that I should stop. I know that I have always been caring and ethical and worked really hard. But does that mean that I haven't overstepped boundaries at times? Does that mean that I haven't had to take a step back and reevaluate how I'm working with people? So anyway, that's kind of my riff on this right now.
And I would also like to throw this in there. That therapist, I'm not familiar with the background, the training, but there are possibly, I'm not saying that I know this for a fact, but energetic forms of healing where, something like spread your legs may have been applicable.
No, I don't agree.
Well, I don't mean like that. I mean,
I don't agree. I think I don't know.
What about someone who works chi energy, who is, if you're meditating and you're sitting down,
if it is anything that involves genitalia, then take that shit out of a psychedelic session.
Well, I'm agreeing. I'm not including psychedelics.
Or advertise.
That's what we're talking about. That's what he's talking about here. Where if that's the case in the session, he tells I would never, ever, ever tell a man, woman, or non-binary to spread their legs during a session, no matter how much.
Yes.
I mean, now I've seen and experienced myself. I've given birth. I have laid there with my legs spread open and moaned in pain as I gave birth to a new me. And I've seen men, women, and everything in between do the same. But for me, and this is one of the reasons, in the training, why so much it's non-directive. Do not be telling people what to do. Do not be telling people how to experience their trip. If there's something that's coming up, and allow it to come on its own and then work with that. If the woman or the man or whoever it was in this session had had like naturally spread their legs and started going through a birthing process or a releasing or whatever, encouraging that and being a support to that and providing a judgment-free space for that to happen, that's one thing. But directing someone to do something like spread your legs or rub your breasts or God knows what it might be, you know, anything that is in any way, like you've got to be so fucking aware
Well,
how
I'm not
vulnerable
even
people are.
including the use of of any form of a chemical. I'm saying, you know, all I'm trying to say is that there may be a modality that practices within this globe, take the MDMA aside, somewhere on Earth, there may be a culture that practices where that may be an applicable
Yeah,
form
but
of
that's not this
their
culture.
healing.
That's
And
not the
that's not
culture
this
we're talking
conversation that we're having.
about.
But
Well,
what I'm
can I say
saying
after
is
Tristan?
that when you sign up to be a therapist in that role, any form that's not applicable to what your guidelines and standards are should not be brought into the space. And I think that is something that's very, you know, maybe it was over these years just getting laxed with what that was. And there's no place for it because the trauma, re-traumatizing someone who has taken X number of years to get to the place that they're at. I know that we're talking about, you know, the cessation of life. Uh, there's no place for it, and that is just upholding what it is, the standards of whatever it is that you're engaging with, and yeah, so that's what I was trying to convey was that the person, you know, I haven't watched the video, but there's a reason that those guidelines have been so strict. And you know, I wish that what's being shown here of not necessarily the sexual misconduct, but the misrepresentation of data, and would be, you know, more transparent in all scientific research. How
Yeah.
many pharmaceutical companies have pushed forth new market drugs that
Oh.
there comes out later in years that there is not the full transparency there, because what is the ultimate goal? Money in the market,
Mm-hmm.
prove the efficacy. So that's all that I was saying. Yeah, I did not definitely needed to clear up my communication. What were you going to say, Charles?
I just want to throw a little fuel on the fire. And I think you were spot on with that word transparency, because in the massage world, obviously professional massage, there are very strict guidelines on draping, on holding one's energy back, etc. But there's also, with transparency, there's room for organizations that do things. For instance, there's a form of massage called tantric massage, I believe is what it's called. And the entire purpose is for, if I use the term sex worker, that's got a lot of baggage with it, but somebody that will sort of erogenously stimulate your body, but there are certain limits and guidelines as to what they'll do. And, you know, people have found healing, people who have deep-rooted sexual blockages for one reason or another can become more in touch with their body. You know, I guess there's a certain group of people that could really benefit from tantric massage. But the clear differentiator is that it's transparent from the beginning what will be touched and how.
Yeah.
And so is there room for Tristan's psychedelic sex cult? maybe when the culture gets more comfortable with this, it probably ring of Timothy Leary and all these terrible figures. But I mean, down the road, I've noticed from the recreational standpoint that, yeah, sometimes letting those boundaries dissolve completely can be very healing. And it's just that this stuff is so fresh and there's not enough infrastructure around it to like separate our organization from, the one Tristan wants to start.
Oh,
Sorry, Tristan.
I think you're right. I agree with you 100% on the transparency from go. Like if someone's going into a tantric session, even if in the future, if that includes MDMA, I don't like if that's known from go and everybody's on the level, then like it's like consenting adults. Who am I to say anything about it? It's this kind of gradual of loosening the boundary and encroaching on someone. It's yeah, no, there's definitely you know I guess like we definitely need oversight
mhm,
in all of these realms, even in the religious realm. I would say for sure. I mean, we don't want psychedelic cultism. We don't, and that's one of the things that we talk about a lot at Sanctuary when among the board and a few members who are ex-Mormons in particular is if we're envisioning building something that's going to outlive us, how do we build that in a way that it can repel the cult of personality stuff? And I was telling Courtney today how now we have more people speaking for Sanctuary, and that actually emboldens me to speak a little louder because I'm not the only one, or I'm not like I don't want to ever be the voice. I don't ever want to be the guru or the guy that's speaking for this thing. As we have more of a community voice that speaks for the organization, then I find myself being more emboldened to speak and to be a little bit more of a public presence because there's that balance held. But like, that was the big thing in my session. I dosed with the group 2 grams of ovoids this weekend past, and a major portion or thread that ran through the entire session for me as I was, kind of moving around between different people um, and just really feeling there were a few moments of what felt like very high level skill that I was exhibiting or, found myself in. And there were some beautiful kind of moments that seem to come from engaging in that level of skill. But through the entire session, every time there would be a thought of, Eric, you're really good at what you do, there would be behind that, there would be this kind of, Eric, you're not doing anything. It's the medicine is working through you. God or the universe or consciousness, whatever it is working through you. And so like that's just such a foundational part of the work that I do, and what I hope that Sanctuary maintains is that we all can continue to realize that we are only vessels of healing to the extent that we can be an empty vessel and allow that to move through us. Go ahead, Sasha.
Thank you. There, probably about 15 or so minutes ago, you mentioned the fact that because we're dealing with boundary dissolving agents used continuously over a long period of time, there are going to be issues. That is a very good point, and one that needs to be reiterated continuously, because I feel that people aren't engaging in these discussions enough. And I really appreciate you for facilitating these kinds of discussions. They need to be had, no doubt about it. And that was one of my major criticisms of Michael Pollan's new Netflix series, that he explicitly, or rather quite clearly, did not discuss this topic at all, not just facilitator misconduct,
mm,
what I have called, and what is appropriate to call, the epidemic of sexual abuse in our community. And it is a sad and unfortunate thing to say, but it's true.
Mm.
And with, gosh, I could go down several different trains of thought here, but I wanted to briefly wrap up the story with Richard Jensen, the therapist that we discussed earlier.
And just a time check. We got 15 minutes. I got to bounce to a kid thing.
Thank you for the time check. I appreciate it. There's been a lot that's happened. If anybody wants to know more about Megan's story, you can follow her on Twitter. It's Meaghan, last name Buisson, Buisson. And if you want to watch the video, which again is graphic, you can look it up by Google searching the term "you won't feel high after watching this video." You could also find it on the Symposia Twitter page right at the top. It's about 8-9 minutes long, if I remember correctly. But I appreciate what everyone shared on the topic. I think that we need to continue to talk about this in a healthy and constructive way, because if we continue to ignore it, it's only going to get worse. And that's why I spent 4 hours on my last podcast talking about this, because I felt that people weren't raising the alarms enough. And if we start talking about this in a self-effacing way, we can help mitigate, minimize, or even prevent the harms that can occur from a community that stays silent on an epidemic that is continually affecting it and will continue to affect it unless we do something about it. Thank you all for your thoughts.
I want to bring up something like just like what this is bringing up for me. Like, so to be 100%, like I want to be 100%. There was, when I very, very early started doing this work, there was an instance where I came very close to having a sexual relationship with someone I was working with. It came very close, and it terrified me. And I came back from that experience, and I reached out to a female member, a female leader in the psychedelic community. And this individual said that they were, this was going to be in confidence. And there was never any sexual misconduct. I never did anything with this person. We never did anything, but it was discussed and it was considered, and nothing ever came of it. But when I got back from the situation, I was just like, holy fuck, this is real. This is something that, even myself, we've got to stay on top of this. We cannot allow these boundaries to get blurred. And when I brought this to a female leader in the psychedelic community, when we spoke, she told me how grateful she was that I came to her and had the courage to talk with her, and that it was, it's okay. These things happen. She had talked about experiences that she had had previously that came too close to a bound, to overstepping a boundary, and how, this is part of the conversation that we have to be having. And then that individual used that privileged information that I shared with her, used that against me. And so if we're going to create a safe space, then we have to create really a for real safe space where people who make mistakes and who have issues that come close or find themselves in a position of, oh fuck, I didn't realize that I was vulnerable to this, that they have someone that they can talk to as well. We can't, this can't just be a conversation where we're pointing fingers and we're saying that person fucked up, they shouldn't be allowed in the game. We should be having conversations where people can actually share their experiences. Because I wonder, the question I have is, if the couple who was involved in this whole MDMA thing, if they, and I don't know, maybe they were just like selfish and they wanted to get theirs and they were going to take advantage of this person no matter what. I don't know the story, but I do question if they had a supportive network where they could go and say, look, this boundary is getting really blurry. We need someone else to work with this person, or you know, and they may very well have had that. And if they do, then fucking shame on them. You
There's
know,
actually a story behind that. I could share it really quick.
sure.
Um, one, if I'm not mistaken, on the timeline here, 1 month before Megan Buisson ended her involvement in the clinical trial altogether, 1 month before that ended, uh, Richard Jensen, the therapist in question, along with his wife Donna Dreyer, uh, uh, spoke at a conference which was immediately published on the MAPS webpage. And in that discussion, Richard Jensen discussed a personal story where he was treating a patient with MDMA. And I'll have to paraphrase here. The patient in question had all of this quote unquote sexual energy about her. And he was questioning his ability to handle the situation. And in fact, it became so intense, I think the word was, that a physician who happened to be witnessing the therapy session from, I don't know, he was passing by in the hall or something, saw the dynamic that was going on between them, pulled Richard Jensen out of the room. And Richard Jensen sharing this during the conference, he's sharing what happened. And he said that the physician told him that, Richard, if you're going to be treating this patient, you have to have another therapist in the room with you. Mm-hmm. And he followed up by saying, oh, thank God, because I don't think I could have handled it. And, this is just freely published on the MAPS webpage a month before Megan drops out of the trial.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
Oh no, I'm very sorry. What I was going to say is that, whenever I was an osteopathic medical student, they learn, we're taught, or we were taught, I was taught, the manipulation of like the pelvic girdle and realigning pubic symphysis. And that is the conversation that we've already brought up. Here's what is going on. Here's what's not in alignment after they do their screening. And even some practitioners, there's a form of osteopathic medicine where you osteopathic manipulative therapy, where it's actually an intrinsic, like, inner vaginally manipulation of the body. And within this field, the reason I bring this up is the transparency, the accountability, and what happens when there's a lack of that, not only within any setting, truly, then you end up with what happened at Michigan State, where a ton of gymnasts who were silenced.
Oh yeah.
Couldn't come and I think that was just something, the abuse of power, what that is, what the lack of accountability, and how the accountability and transparency is, kind of not been the standard in this past century in a way.
Well, no, I mean, men have just been fucking doing what they want. I mean, like, look at the history of hysteria and women going to a doctor for an orgasm, and like what the fuck is going on? Like, where we have given these clinicians like this god power to do anything and everything, and as long as the risk benefit analysis shows that enough people will
benefit
that the financial risk of paying for people who die from, it's just fucked. But I just really think, and this is something I have wanted to talk about for a long time, I really think that it is extremely important that, and I have absolutely seen, I have had female therapists who worked for me who had to who came to me and said, look, I'm having sexual tension with this person, and I don't know what to do. And and they could talk to me, and I could say, like, let's put somebody else on them. Let's, you don't work with that person. That's what you do, basically. But to be able to have resources, community available, so that those who are having normal human struggles can find support, can find ways to transcend their own personal issues and really grow through the process instead of being drugged down through it, if that makes sense. So I just like, I don't know, man. I think like so much of the so many topics that we talk about as a culture are so complicated, they're so nuanced, and we just kind of like, this is the way it is. This person, you know, is this or was that, or this, the way you're talking means this or that, when everybody is coming with such a different life experience and unprocessed trauma and information.
Thank you, Sasha, for bringing this up. Even though I have limited knowledge other than what you shared, I definitely appreciate every time that you bring what you do.
I appreciate everyone else on this call as well. I wanted to quickly touch on something that Tristan and Charles were talking about in relation to certain modalities in which touch is utilized or certain body orientations are utilized. There are definitely ways in which such practices can be therapeutic or helpful or beneficial. But just to bring everything back into context with the clinical trial participant we were talking about, they were there for post-traumatic stress related to previous sexual assaults. And I don't think under any circumstance it would have been appropriate for Mr. Jensen to have said, perhaps you can try and open your legs, I think was the full quote, because she was feeling tense, I think was the exact reason. But we could easily spend hours unpacking that whole story and all of the implications. Cover story, Power Trip, did a pretty good job of doing that. A lot of people have criticized it, but I think a lot of those criticisms are misplaced. But there's a lot more that could be talked about. But like we were talking about earlier, this is an ongoing discussion, and it's dependent upon our willingness to engage in the topic for us to actually find that light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm. And I personally feel like the ones that don't engage in the full conversation are the ones that we should really be watchful of, mindful of. Like if it's all one or the other, anytime someone's coming in something like this, like it's a one or the other thing. I think that this situation with the MAPS trial, like all that thing in Canada, that looks very much like predatory behavior. It looks very much, like there was a long, ongoing setup. There's like two something year history there of kind of preying on this person's weakness,
Yes.
which is it's horrifying. It's kind of inevitable. I don't mean to say that lightly, and I don't think that means that we should just allow it by any means, right? But particularly in psychedelics, there are, God, if I could just, the number of people who are ill-intended or ill-experienced getting into this is just fucking astronomical. And that's where we're going to have, I feel like, the greatest, the biggest challenge in really kind of keeping any kind of reins on this, which is, again, like there's an irony there because, in my practice, at least, like as far as working with individuals, I, you can't say anything goes by any means, but you want to allow space for things to be what they are organically. And if someone is having, I have absolutely had women and men who I have worked with in psychedelic space who have had a cosmic orgasm right there on the ground in front of everybody, and I'm not going to stop that. I'm not going to shame that. And when we have integration conversations about that, we're going to talk about that. We're not going to run from this stuff, and that's doing this thing in the cover of a laboratory or in a shaman's hut somewhere. No, it's, again, why I feel like the way that we're doing it sanctuary in this big community where everybody sees everybody, right? that, and I mean not just in the session. Everybody sees everybody in the ongoing community. We have weekly meetings. We have meetings twice a week actually that don't involve any sacrament, and we have tons of people that come to that. And so that full front-facing, open community that is not afraid to talk about whatever challenging topic comes up, be it sexuality or trauma or physical abuse or suicide. I've worked with a lot of people whose children have committed suicide or their spouse has committed suicide, and whatever it is, people need a place to be able to talk about their experience so that they can process it. And I really like I, the therapists with MAPS. In a big way, my heart goes out to them. I don't want to lose compassion for anybody. Somewhere along the line, they got fucked up. Somewhere along the line, they didn't process their shit. They didn't get support or something happened. And anybody that is perpetuating abuse or trauma is someone who has been abused and traumatized and unhealed and continues to pass that on. So, like, I make no excuses for what they did and in no way condone it. But at the same time, like, I want everybody to be operating as their most healthy, fulfilled, highest self, so that that's what they can bring, not just to the clients that they work with, but the as we talked, Charles, the cashier, or whoever it is that you encounter. So anyway, this is such a big topic, and I've already gone 1 minute over. I love this. Thank you all for giving me a chance to really be vulnerable and be real. That's the motto I'm always trying to set, because I feel like that's how we're going to really make progress and grow and heal as a community. So
intention, respect, accountability. We can do this thing.
Mm-hmm. We're doing it, and there's going to be mistakes along the way. There will be shit that comes up, and there will be people that, Neil Goldsmith, I think, is no longer active in the psychedelic community and whatever. And anyway, we're doing it, and we just got to keep compassionately holding each other accountable. That's my belief anyway.
Love y'all.
All right.
Thanks,
Much love.
everybody.
Much love.
Harmony, love, truth, and justice.
Love it.
Woo!
All right. Peace, everybody. Thanks so much.